Straight ahead, mass deportation, how President-elect Donald Trump's plan to deport migrants who are here illegally could impact Texas. Social media ban. State Representative Jared Patterson of Frisco talks about his plan to keep children off social media. And one-on-one, Democratic Congressman Mark Vesey of Fort Worth makes a pledge after his party's tough losses on election night. Good morning. Happy Sunday to you. I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics starts now. Hello and welcome to Eye on Politics. What a busy week. We begin with President-elect Donald Trump's mass deportation plan. The president-elect confirmed on social media last week he plans to use the military to help him carry out his policy. His comments come as there are now reportedly 1.4 million people in the country illegally who have been given final deportation orders by an immigration judge. Texas Land Commissioner Dawn Buckingham sent this letter to President-elect Trump offering 1,400 acres of state land along the border in Starr County to build facilities to put the policy into action. I spoke with Republican State Representative David Spiller of Jacksboro, who supports the president's policy.
We're going to have to do something because the Biden-Harris administration the previous 4 years has allowed an unprecedented number of illegal aliens just pour into our country, millions. And many, what's enough more problematic is that so many are terrorists, they're convicted felons, murderers, rapists, gang members and others. And we've got to do something to turn back that tide. And again, Texas is going to have to do what it has to do to step up and protect Texans when the federal government has failed and refused to do so.
And you support the land commissioner's offer to the Trump administration?
Well, that would make, yes, because it would make perfect sense to utilize Texas. Texas is on the front lines. This is where they're primarily coming across and have been for the previous 4 years. So certainly it would be more efficient to set up some facilities here in Texas to address that problem. First and foremost, I would look to several areas. One would be, number one, if the Fifth Circuit would rule as far as the temporary enforcement of SB 4, my bill, to allow us to enforce illegal entry, illegal reentry, and violation of a order to return. That would be helpful, and that's got a 2-year limitation period on it. Number two is certainly we need to deal with criminals, people that are convicted felons and others that are pouring into our country. That would be priority number one. The federal government has identified, basically said 2/3 of those arrested on federal charges in our country are here illegally. So it's become a growing problem. I have several bills to address some of those problems. One is to require local law enforcement to confirm someone's immigration status when they're arrested or detained or incarcerated. Certainly under the federal government, they have that right now. And many law enforcement agencies in Texas are doing that. Some are not, and they're doing so intentionally because they don't want to report that information. But to wait until someone's in prison to find out if they're here in our country illegally is wrong-headed. And I believe that so much of our crime is being committed by people in our country illegally, and that needs to be a priority to stop that.
Democratic State Senator Roland Gutierrez of San Antonio criticizes the president-elect's proposal and says he worries the economy will take a hit.
Our economy is going to hurt drastically. I'm not entirely sure that he's going to be able to use active duty military, and so that's what they're going to try to do for sure. I think that there are some protections in place in our current laws to be able to keep that from happening. Nevertheless, he is obviously going to go to some extreme measures to do this. We'll see what happens here in the months to follow. But I think that people in Dallas and all over this state that are used to their babysitters and their gardeners and the guy working behind the counter, behind the kitchen in Taco Bell and everywhere else, they should all think twice about it because things are going to cost a lot more going forward.
And I was just going to ask you about that because you brought up the economy and all that. Is that your biggest concern as far as fallout?
Well, look, I mean, this guy painted this doom and gloom picture that migrants are coming over to kill us all and rape our children and so on and so forth. We all know that our economy is based in large part on an immigrant economy in the areas of meat packing. If you look at the sea shift across this country in our meat packing plants, and I'm not just talking about one place, they're all over the United States. The C shift is the shift in the night hours. The vast majority of those employees are migrants. If you look in your kitchen at the Taco Bell or wherever it is that you go get your fast food, vast majority of those people are undocumented. If you look at just the farmers and ranchers that are trying to maintain their farming and ranching industry, we have a broken H-2A program. It makes it very difficult for them to get legal labor, and so they resort to getting undocumented labor. We have a broken immigration system for sure, a system that absolutely needs to be fixed. But the notion that you're going to go out and deport, 12, 13 million people is just ludicrous. Number one, how are you going to pay for it? If he is successful to even a fraction thereof, it will absolutely impact our economy in a negative way. If you look at our home housing starts, if you look at construction, when you see a new subdivision being put up in the middle of the summer heat at 110 degrees, who's on those rooftops? Who's framing those houses? It's undocumented labor. So let's be very clear. These are jobs that Americans simply don't want to do. And they're getting paid well enough, but Americans don't want to do this work.
Staying along the southern border, relief is on the way to Texas farmers and cities. The state of Texas has accepted water from Mexico, heading off a bitter fight. I spoke with Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller about that and about the speculation that he could be tapped by President-elect Trump to serve as U.S. Agriculture Secretary. But we began our conversation with the issue of water.
We've had a real water shortage, drought problem in South Texas. We've lost our sugarcane industry down there, not enough water for the farmers. So the last processing plant closed down. We bulldozed 6,000 acres of citrus. Our vegetable growers down there had enough water for one crop where they usually, grow 4 or 5. So it's in dire needs. Mexico signed a treaty with us about in 1944 to share the water in the Rio Grande River. They're behind on their water bill. They still owe us 1 million acre feet, and they're just not going to be able to pay it. They did have some good fortune on the east side of Mexico in the San Juan watershed. They got a lot of rain. They have 2 lakes there. They're both over capacity. One's at 118%, the other 120-something%. So they started releasing that water into the Rio Grande, but it's below any dams. There's no way to catch it. It was running right out into the Gulf of Mexico. So by executive order, I declared that the farmers in that area should use that for irrigation instead of just wasting it and letting it go by. That caused a lot of concern, and the TCEQ and the International Water Board couldn't figure out how to account for the water. And I just said, well, don't count it. Just let them use it. Don't worry about it. And anyway, the positive part of it, it got all the sides talking again. And now we have an agreement with Mexico to let them count that against their water debt. And we've ironed our differences out. And so it looks like we're actually getting somewhere. And the cities along the Rio Grande are going to have some water that they probably wouldn't have had. And the farmers are finally going to have some water they can irrigate. This will keep a lot of farmers from filing bankruptcy.
Wow. And I mean, it's that dire of a situation.
It really is. The whole state is out of water. The state of Texas owns all the surface water, and we've allocated it all. We still have people moving in here from California, but they don't bring any water with them. They use ours, and we're at capacity, and no one's talking about it. But we've got to address our infrastructure problems. We lose a lot of water because of old, inadequate infrastructure. We've got to embrace desalination. We've got to embrace rainwater harvesting. We've got to do a better job of stormwater drainage. We need to capture that water. We're not building enough lakes. We need to build off-channel storage when our rivers have high rainfall. We're not doing any of this.
Why not?
So we need to quit complaining about Mexico not paying their bill and, take care of our own needs, do something about it.
Why isn't the state of Texas doing anything about it?
Well, I think we are. We're getting this incident has brought some attention to it. I know the legislature is looking at addressing these needs. I have grants to help with infrastructure improvements. So the Texas Water Development Board has $6 billion for water projects that we can tap into. There's federal programs. So I think now these cities and counties are getting the message that they can't grow, they can't expand, they can't add any more population without water. So now's the time to get busy.
Your name has come up a lot recently when you talk about Texans who could be in the President-elect Donald Trump's second cabinet. And so I'm wondering, A, what do you think about being on that list? And B, have you had any conversations with the transition team about, that job, that post?
I'm just honored to be considered. It's quite an honor to be on that list. That list is got a lot of people that are worthy and well qualified to lead the nation's, United States Department of Agriculture. So I'm very honored and flattered to be even considered.
Governor Abbott issued a series of executive orders last week aimed at protecting Texans from the Chinese Communist Party. Sarah Jenkins explains in this week's brief.
Governor Abbott's first order targeted the party's alleged harassment of Texans. Abbott said, quote, "The Chinese Communist Party has engaged in a worldwide harassment campaign against Chinese dissidents and attempts to forcibly return them to China." He directed the Department of Public Safety to identify and bring charges against anyone harassing Texans on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. Next, Abbott issued an order for state agencies and educational institutions to increase security and safeguard against critical infrastructure and intellectual property being accessed by hostile foreign nations. The governor then issued a third order directing state agencies to identify vulnerabilities and protect against potential cyber attacks, like simulating restarting Texas's electrical grid in the event of a foreign attack. The FBI's Houston office also issued a warning to Texans that the Chinese government may be targeting and harassing individuals of Chinese descent who speak out against the Chinese Communist Party in Texas.
Thank you, Sarah. We're just getting started here. Coming up next, a North Texas Democratic Congressman makes a pledge after his party's tough losses on Election Day. And later, a new bill to keep Texas children off social media when Eye on Politics returns. Welcome back to Eye on Politics. Many Democratic lawmakers and candidates in Texas and across the country are still feeling stung about the results of this month's election. They include Congressman Mark Vesey of Fort Worth, who has been selected as a vice chair for the new Democrat coalition. It's a group of 100 members of Congress who consider themselves pragmatic and center-left. I spoke with Vesey a few days before he was chosen about the election results.
Obviously, the way that I see President Trump, the way that I think President Trump conducts himself, the way that I think President Trump poses a threat to the United States, there were a majority of people in the electoral college states that he needed in order to win that feel differently than I do. And so as Democrats, we need to go back and reassess that.
The poll showed that inflation, cost of living in the economy, and border security were the top issues, not only here in Texas, but nationally. And so I'm wondering, what do you think the Democrats need to do specifically?
I think that border issues is obviously going to be something that we are going to have to address and change the way how we address it. I also think that a lot of topics around energy, a lot of discussion that we have around energy and energy consumption, I think that we have to change that. And then also, speaking of energy, just the way that we sort of sometimes think that something that is important to us may not be as important to the rest of the American public.
As you know, Republicans now have the trifecta. They've got the White House, they've got the House, they've got the Senate. And so I'm wondering, what are your top priorities in the next session of Congress?
My top priorities in the next session of Congress, obviously going to be working very hard to make sure that we get the funding that we need for our flood control project in Fort Worth. That's going to be hugely important. The second thing I would say is that we absolutely have to make sure that we fund the Affordable Connectivity Program There are many low-income families in the 33rd Congressional District and surrounding areas that are very dependent on the Affordable Connectivity Program to make sure that they can have broadband inside their house so they can fit in with the rest of what's happening right now in the 21st century. And then obviously anything that we can do to work on the federal side to do something about Governor Abbott's inaction on Medicaid expansion. There are several different proposals that have been talked about throughout the year since the ACA became law for states that haven't opted in yet. And it's just ridiculous that the governor hasn't opted in. Texas could benefit from that. We have over 1 million people in the DFW area alone that don't have health care insurance.
Up next, a state lawmaker has filed a bill to keep children off social media. He explains how it will work when Eye on Politics comes right back. Now to a bill that would keep Texas children off social media. Republican State Representative Jared Patterson of Frisco has proposed legislation that would require social media platforms to verify that new users are 18 or older and allow the Attorney General to target companies that have minors on their platforms. I also asked about the Texas speaker's race, but we began our conversation about the new bill.
I think this is one of the most important things that we could do next session, is to protect Texas kids from these huge social media companies that target them with these algorithms that take them down these deep and dark holes online and give strangers access to our kids. It is a very dangerous thing. In fact, I believe that it is the most dangerous thing our kids have legal access to in the state. It's that big of a deal. How it would work is that social media companies would be barred from doing business with minors. There would be an age verification process. And then also parents would be given the ability to remove their child's social media pages if they so choose. And so, there's kind of a multi-step process there, but the bottom line is we're going to keep social media companies from doing business with minors.
Is it 18 or below, or is it below 18?
It's below 18. Look, we have a series of laws in this state to protect the physical health of kids. You can't buy a handgun, you can't buy alcohol, you can't buy tobacco. There's certain things that children in the state of Texas that young people can't do legally to protect their physical well-being. And I believe that it's time that we put their mental health at the same level of importance as their physical well-being. From an enforcement standpoint, we would empower the Attorney General's office of the state of Texas to go after these social media companies if they choose to go around this law.
And what do you say to those who say, this is big government at work here, and let the parents figure this out?
I think parents need help with this. I really do. We've heard that. It's one of these things that we've learned about over the last decade or so, as we've seen a spike in self-harm, in suicide rates, in anxiety and mental health disorders. Our kids are killing themselves at a clip that we've never seen before in the history of the state of Texas. That's a really, really big deal. At the same time, it's coincided with this rapid rise of minors being involved in social media. I believe the government has a duty to protect the citizens and the residents of the state of Texas.
The speaker's race, that's coming
Yes,
up
absolutely.
in early December, as you know, with the House Republican Caucus meeting. Where are you on backing either Speaker Phelan or Representative Cook?
Yeah, look, I think Speaker Phelan's going to be the speaker next session, and I'm fully supportive of that. There's been a lot made, and you start to hear a lot of people digging into the weeds on House processes, on how this committee's structured, or how these House rules are structured. Nobody ever talked to me about that when I was at the door knocking doors, or talking to voters, or going to events in my district. Nobody talks about the minutia of House rules. Do you know why they're talking about it? They're talking about it because we're coming off of the two most conservative sessions in the history of the state of Texas. We have passed legacy conservative reforms that Republicans only dreamed of about 6 years ago. We passed a ban of elective abortions in Texas, saving 50,000 babies in Texas every single month. We've passed constitutional carry. For the first time since Reconstruction, you don't have to ask the government's permission to keep and bear arms. The largest border security investment of any state in the history of the United States, the largest investment in property tax relief of any state in the history of the United States. We have passed so many red meat, strong, legacy conservative wins that now we're debating minutia of House rules that, quite frankly, the people that I represent don't care about.
But the grassroots in the Texas GOP does, and the chair of the Texas GOP is making this a big issue. And where are you on the issue of no Democratic committee chairs? Because that's a very big issue, at least with the Republican grassroots.
Yeah, you know, look, and I understand why it's an issue, and it's an issue because we've passed so many red meat items in the last 2 sessions. The grifters who go out there and make money off of primary races have to drum up everybody on an issue so that they can continue to make money in the primaries. I mean, that's honestly what this is about.
All of our full interviews are on our website, cbsnewstexas.com. Just go to the Eye on Politics section and look for Jack Fink interviews. That's all for Eye on Politics this week. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening to you at CBS News Texas. Wishing you all a very happy Thanksgiving. I'm grateful for my family, friends, and my dedicated co-workers who help me with our show every week, and you, our viewers. See you next Sunday.